Hello again. I wanted to speak on the camera keeps shaking, and I need to remember that. I don't want to speak on that. I just noticed it. But I did want to speak on a favorite topic of mine, which is navigating your emotional world. And we all have emotions. Some of them can stick to us for a little bit longer than others, and some of them might be sticking to us without even realizing it because we've pushed it so far back or down or in, away from our conscious and present moment, our day to day life. I personally believe that the more that I can acknowledge those feelings and allow them to flow through me like water and notice anything that's not doing that. Notice it, observe it, and Get curious as to why it isn't flowing like water because, they talk about how emotions are energy in motion. And so it should be flowing through like water. And if it's not, then there's something there that maybe is wanting some attention or needing some attention. And I have noticed that whenever I pay attention to those areas, that I get a lot of clarity about myself. I get a lot of understanding about also how the universe works in relationship to me and in my response to that said emotion. And even in my response to the lack of clarity or lack of understanding that I have about that emotion. Whenever I can get curious about it and open my mind up to it, clarity comes. It might not make sense. It might not be logical, but it is empowering and it brings me back home to myself. And I couldn't help but think about how whenever we are babies and kids and stuff, we are needing to survive on other people to help us survive. We're needing to rely on them to help us survive. We're called in a vulnerable place, whether it's physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever it is. And the humans, the parents, whoever it is, it doesn't even have to be parents, those that we are relying on have been here longer than we have and they know how to survive. And at some point, though, because we are looking outside of us to help teach us how to be a human, how to do this thing called life, we forget that we also have, and we don't realize, but we also have everything we need to do that within ourselves for ourselves, to be our own leader of our life. But it's very easy not to realize that. It's very easy not to acknowledge and live in the embodiment of loving ourselves, of being present with ourselves, of leading us. So I think I think that leading with love is so important. It's for me. Leading my life with love and learning how to do that has been a really fun journey. It's been a great joy, honestly. But first and foremost with that, I had to have a sense of trust within myself, a sense of safety within myself, and trust knowing that no matter what emotions, no matter what thoughts and beliefs come up, that I still love myself. I still am safe and I'm not going to betray myself. And I had to get to get through some beliefs and some feelings just to get to that point. But it was part of what helped me, part of what was a was what got me there. I was like, what are the words? Part of what got me there was I had to disconnect, and I'm still disconnecting from the old mindset of looking outside of me, looking at the people, the systems, the structures outside of me to help me figure out what I want, rather than listening to my intuition, listening to my connection to divine, my true self, to my inner child, any of those things. Like listening to those things to not only get to know myself better, but also to kind of help guide me through life, to truly know what is best for me. Because I am a spiritual being as well as a human being. And my spiritual being knows far more than my human mind can understand. It sees the bigger picture. It is much more connected in the energy world and also just in general. And so I can trust that. But I had to establish that sense of safety and trust within me first, and with that part of me first, before I could start walking that journey out of really leading my life with love. So to tie it all back around, managing your emotional world. So whenever I started learning how to trust and establish safety within myself, lots of emotions, as I've already said, came up, lots of beliefs, because emotions and beliefs are connected. And honestly, they would just randomly come. Some of them, there would be like certain words or certain things that would trigger it. And that's typically that's probably mainly what would happen, is like things would trigger it. But instead of pushing it away, or instead of not even acknowledging it, I, being the person that I am, would acknowledge it and allow it to expand on the inside of me, trusting that there was something here for me, and a piece of clarity here for me. And whenever I did that and just allowed it to be, eventually that clarity came. And sometimes it was just, okay, you can do this. Or there's more to this, or this is the next step. And that's it. Like, it wasn't any big picture, sometimes they were, but it was more so of supportive, and also, okay, this is the intuitively next step that, that's meant for you, that you can take. And whenever I would listen to that and trust it, healing would gradually happen. It was just subtle healing. It was just like, it felt like a blanket. Like, it felt like comforting and just a blanket. Like, it was really nice doing that. But then I would do that, and then, a day, a week, a month, not a year, because it was never that long, but a certain amount of time would go by, and I would then get triggered again. And, and again, I don't want to make it sound dramatic, but, I could, but again and again and again. Okay, I had to do it just once. But whenever I was able to bring awareness into those moments and just increase allow that feeling to expand within me rather than trying to push it down and to make it small, that is whenever that comfort came. That's whenever the clarity came. And can I just tell you, I think it is so interesting that we experience our definition of love is defined by, well, of course, like those that helped us grow up as human beings. But also, more specifically, at least from this lens that's happening right now, it is defined by vulnerability. whenever we are in a vulnerable place, one way or another, how, as a baby and stuff, how systems, cultures, tribes, family showed up for us, however they did, whether it's perfectly, imperfectly, conditionally, or unconditionally, that is how we grew up defining love. And that's the old way of operating, having something outside of me define me and my purpose and my decisions. The new way, in my opinion, that I'm also living in and embodying and practicing, continually practicing, letting go of the old and bringing in the new, is allowing myself to be vulnerable within myself and having that safety and trust established. But first and foremost, allowing myself to be vulnerable underneath that safety and trust, which is also love. But whenever I have that, then that's whenever I have room and space to experience divine, true love. And this can be, the love that's just bigger, that's bigger than my human experience, the love that is bigger than my understanding, and that's outside of my control. That's also very scary, of course, but the safety and the trust is still there. The warmth and the blanket is still there. I love this stuff. And the more that I have opened myself up to feel the feels and to let it flow through and to observe what doesn't flow through and to get curious about it and then eventually allow it to flow through by healing and increasing my awareness around it, the more that I've done that, the more that divine unconditional love just gets bigger and better and better and better and better. And it comes into my day to day. It comes into my moment by moment. It's like I'm a very earthy person. So it comes by birds, it comes by ducks, it comes by trees. It literally is, it's so, and dolphins, but it is so, so cool. So cool. So I would love for everyone to discover their own version of this, to really start discovering your own emotional world, your own spiritual world, and see what it feels like to have safety and trust held within yourself, to have that established within yourself enough to be able to be vulnerable and enough to be able to experience vulnerability, open yourself up to experience that divine love that is bigger than you could ever imagine. I could talk about this for a long time, but I think that's a good stopping point. Thank you for joining me.